That is in conflict with the federal Title IX piece. There was, I believe it was on Monday, there was an injunction granted specifically to a couple of students. It's not a statewide injunction by any means yet, it's just for those two students. And we're going to be following this closely. But as an administrative team at our administrative retreat, we spent quite a bit of time on Title IX because it's just changing some of our processes and procedures for every district out there. So I'll turn it over to Tim, and then we'll do our best to answer any questions that we can.
All right, so as Andy mentioned, just this past week, Governor Sununu signed into state law a bill that requires schools to designate athletics by sex and prohibits biological males participating in competitive female sports. A term that's also used here is transgender female. So the bill creates a burden for females trying out for competitive female sports. Couple notes. The law indicates that the school board should adopt and enforce a policy ensuring compliance with said state law. To comply, we need to add birth certificates as part of the sports registration process, and the law itself it is copied below and linked below, and it gets into a little bit more of the nitty-gritty, but to comply, in order to confirm sex at birth, we would require birth certificates, and there's some language around those requirements. We currently do require birth certificates at student registration. That's not just for athletics, but that's for all students. But they don't necessarily meet the standard and the language of the law that's described down below. Our fall sports registration started in the spring, long before this bill was on our radar. And like I said, it does not include the requirement for the birth certificates. We require birth certificates specifically for student registration. Ultimately, this law eliminates the opportunity for transgender students, transgender girls, to play on competitive girls' teams. The law does not restrict transgender males from competing on boys' teams. So it is in stark contrast with, like Andy said, Title IX, the federal law, which allows students to choose sport based on the gender in which they identify. So,
does it specifically permit transgender boys from doing that? I thought it just said that you can't participate in a sport that's different from what was on your birth certificate.
no, it's specific to transgender females. The restriction is specific to transgender females. And I didn't clarify this earlier, the first sentence there, require schools to designate athletics by sex. We've always done that. When you register, actually it's seasonally, you have to identify the sports in which you're taking part in through the NHIAA, and they're listed as boys sports, girls sports, and co-ed sports. And you might be surprised, some sports, as an example, football is a co-ed sport.
Is baseball a college sport?
Interesting. Baseball is.
And softball is not.
Softball is not. Yeah. So there's some nuances, but all sports are identified as either boys sports, girls sports, or co-ed.
What is exclusively boys sport?
Off the top of my head,
Do you know any?
That's a good question.
Well, we
I
have
think the
boys.
ones where there's an opposite offer.
So like boys
Yeah,
soccer.
boys soccer.
Boys
That's what I was
soccer,
Girls
gonna say.
soccer.
Yeah.
Boys basketball, girls basketball.
So, but are girls allowed to play on boys soccer? Boys soccer?
You,
I don't mean by law, like NHIAA. Maybe that's covered by law.
I don't believe so. I don't know if you're asking this question, we're talking about transgender athletes though.
What I'm wondering is you said that it doesn't affect transgender boy participation, but in something that is identified as a boys and not a co-ed sport, is there a prohibition for
So I think we're talking about field hockey. We have a girls' field hockey team. I know you're talking about the reverse, but, and because it's a girls' field hockey team, girls play on the team. And historically, transgender girls, if you identify and consistently identify as a girl, then you can play on a girls' team. This new law kind of strips that away. And I'm trying to think of a boys' team that's like field hockey, but that was the one that,
No, but where there's boys and girls soccer.
Offerings, yeah. So I think Title IX addresses that in that you have to have the equivalent offering.
But do we prohibit,
We've, n-
would we prohibit a girl from being on a boys soccer team?
I haven't had that situation or request come to us. I believe because it's the equal offering, we're meeting the Title IX requirement. We would not be violating their rights to say, no, you cannot play a boys' sport as a female.
Title IX extends beyond sports, though.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
something that I saw in it that I thought was kind of a big deal, and that is the change from having to have an outside, third-party investigate. And now, someone other than the person who makes the decision on a case, now the same person can investigate and rule. Which means that when we have the superintendent as the highest order, the superintendent can also conduct the investigation rather than have to bring in an outside party to do it. I thought that's a pretty big change, isn't it?
Well, we've always been able to conduct the investigations. You don't have to bring an outside party
Well, current-
into it.
The current law says, at least for, maybe New Hampshire's different, this was Massachusetts, but I thought they were saying at the federal level, that for certain types of harassment policies, the person doing the investigation could not be the person.
The decision maker, correct.
Right.
But both people can work in the district. So like if I was the investigator, or Gina could be the decision maker.
Right, but it can't be the same individual.
It couldn't be, now it can,
Correct,
yes.
right.
That's what the change was for 24. One of the many
And it
changes.
didn't have to be
24.
outside, it just had to be a
Correct.
non-decision maker.
Correct.
And just so the board's aware, our Title IX officer is Lauren. Okay, so all that goes to her. But I also bring it to your attention because oftentimes people are asking us why we need administrators. This law and these changes are just gonna,
They're much more broad.
right, it's very cumbersome because there can be conflicts with this law and the bullying law. And then this law under discrimination would take precedent, which a lot of people think that bullying is the worst thing that could happen. It really isn't, it's the discrimination piece. There's all sorts of nuances because a parent could decide they don't want to do an investigation under Title IX, but they do want to proceed with a bullying investigation. They could request a bullying investigation. We start that and realize it does fall under Title IX. We have to stop the bullying investigations and all the legal timelines that go with that get stopped. And then we start a whole set of new timelines for the Title IX. So it's a significant change. Right now, if somebody was impacted by this in our district, I would, most likely, the district would get sued because pick either side you get sued for. Either I didn't follow the New Hampshire
The
law,
athletics.
or I didn't follow the Title IX law regarding athletics. So it's just, it's something that right now will go to a full hearing, and there'll be a decision coming out in a few weeks that will kind of oversee all children. And it's going on not just in the state of New Hampshire, but across the country.
The other one that I thought was a big deal is there are, what they call confidential,
Employees.
Employees, yeah.
employees. And in the past, once, if the confidential for her in the past.
Correct.
And we won't have any confidential employees across the district. That really,
Were they in the past?
no. What typically fell under that realm was a LADAC, the Licensed Drug and Alcohol Counselor. Under their license, they were allowed to keep things confidential, and many times they worked in schools. We don't have that, and we don't intend to designate somebody as that person, because they don't have the credentials or the need. So we'll just move everything forward with our procedures, but it's cumbersome, time-consuming, and I've said this to our attorneys, in a lot of ways, we're being asked to look at things that we're not trained to do. Now, we've done 2 summers of training, so I feel comfortable that we can make some decisions, but in most cases, it's still gonna most likely just result in either Lauren or I picking up the phone and incurring further legal bills.
Do we have, without going into any detail, do we have any active athletic situations right now that are impacted by this for the upcoming season?
No.
I mean, this is just, I think this is so interesting, because didn't it used to be, I know, and I'm using volleyball as an example because I've seen it done in volleyball, that if you have a girls' team but you don't have a boys' team, the boy could play on the girls' team, they were allowed to, they couldn't play in the front row, but they could play, because you had to offer that sport to them?
I would say years ago that was true, and it may be true in some of the lower divisions that don't have the numbers, but like in our division, the upper divisions,
Right, I know
is now
that
the
we
bo-
have
yeah.
that, but I'm just saying,
Yeah.
in situations, I know, I mean, not just volleyball, but basketball, you know,
Yep.
whatever the situation. That's, so this is interesting.
Yeah.
Do
Mhm.
you have any belief that this will get resolved this school year? Because right now, I heard, the initial suit is against the director of DOE, right?
Well, there,
They brought suit,
That's how I heard it, yeah.
yeah,
who's actually being sued.
I think there's more people in that in terms of where this will go, and
But it hasn't gone to the legislature yet.
no, that is, it has not. And I don't know if it will go back to them, or whether it will be just found constitutional, unconstitutional. This was more just making the board aware, so if it comes up, because people read the paper and see what's going on in other towns, we are able to move forward. We have done everything we've needed to do, but there could potentially be conflicts that we can't escape from because the 2 laws are in conflict.
And just a reminder, our federal funding, the general assurances are that we're following federal laws. So there's a lot at
And-
stake.
And just so you know that if I violate the state law, we'll end up probably in Superior Court. If I violate the federal law, it will result in an Office of Civil Rights complaint that will go there. And I will say that is a longer process, but both unfavorable in the end. So,
Interesting.
All right. Moving on. Budget committee update. Did you guys meet this?
We have not met yet, the next meeting will be next week.
All righty then. That was fast. Facilities committee.
I can do that one.
Thank you.
No
I
problem.
have been unable to
No, that's all
attend.
right.
September's
The
coming up.
Facilities Committee was unable to meet in August, but have made tremendous progress, and we intend to hopefully for October or November, bring kind of what we believe the updates that we need to do, and trying to put some corresponding prices to those to look to move forward. For those at home that might not always follow along, we're looking at the boiler system here at the middle school. We're also looking at some solar pieces, and then looking at a couple older mechanical units, HVAC units and things of that nature here at the middle school. So there are a number of things that will be put into what I'll say a package. The Facilities Committee will be discussing that package at their September meeting and deciding where they would like to see it. And then we'll be bringing that October, November for the board to kind of determine if they want to move forward with a bond. Or that's one of the other reasons why we're looking at the Articles of Agreement, or a lease, because a lot of this is mechanical, which is, has the ability to be leased. So we'll be back in the facilities meeting in September, and then have something most likely, maybe September, but more likely October, to bring to this board.
Great.
I just, before we end the discussion, just a couple items that I probably didn't hear she inform the board about. One is, there was a board chairs meeting, and, it was pretty brief, and Andy and Gina were both at the leadership retreat. But, one of the things that was discussed that people want to perhaps keep on their radar is, although we don't see directly here, the elementary districts are being heavily impacted by concerns about enrollment increases.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of discussion going on here about space considerations, staffing, the whole thing, so, we're kind of fortunate that it hasn't moved its way up, but from a overall SBU basis, it's likely to impact us. And the other part of that is some of the concerns that are bubbling up. Andy's retirement and Gina's promotion. It's kind of like one of those puzzles where you move the square,
Mhm.
and all of a sudden you keep moving around. So the combination of that, and as Andy mentioned, the retirement of the building principal in Brookline has created two significant holes in the administration level. And it's possible that there may be interested candidates internally within the SAU for one or more positions that create as you start juggling. And so on people's radar is the possibility that there will be both movement and possible attrition, depending on how those positions get filled, that will require action for recruiting, interviewing, hiring, and whole things. So
Mhm.
that's going to be a topic of ongoing discussion throughout this upcoming school year.
Thank you.
The other thing I just want to put on people's radar is, we've got an exciting meeting planned for October, the SAU Governing Board meeting. Mary Christina is going to attend our meeting and help us with discussion and conversation with the headline topic being interaction between board members and community, how to balance that whole thing out. So please do your best to participate and attend. I'm going to try and work with Andy and Barrett to give him sort of, not necessarily outline, but some ideas, the questions and topics. So this will be in the October meeting.
October 10th.
October
Nice.
10th. It's a public activity, it's primarily for the board, but if you have your favorite public members who are always pushing the envelope as far as what they're asking of you as a board member, they might be interested in either attending or watching. So
Agreed.
please try to be there if you can.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. All right, guess we can move on to deliberations. So first up is to see what action the board will take regarding the performing arts trip to New Orleans.
That was in the board packet last month. It was asked at that time to kind of submit it again this month, so people had time to digest it. and kind of let the community have time, if they were interested, to become aware of it. I'll turn it over to Tim. If there's any specific questions, he will try to answer them for you. But if not, we're just looking to gain permission tonight to start that process.
Any changes to what was proposed last month?
No, sir.
Do we need a motion before we actually chat
Yeah.
about it?
Yep.
Would be good.
All right, so we need a motion to approve the field trip request for the performing arts students to travel to New Orleans, Louisiana on April 24th, 2024 through April 28th, 2025.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by
Rob?
Rob?
Rob.
Rabbi.
Yeah, Rabbi. Seconded by Beth. Any further discussion?
I think it's a great opportunity that we can extend this type of activity, so I'm all for it.
Kids out of the bar.
I believe I have one.
And
vote.
elsewhere.
Yeah,
But
And elsewhere.
yeah.
And elsewhere. I agree, it's gonna be an awesome opportunity. If there's no other discussion,
Doesn't sound like it. It doesn't sound
no other
like it.
valid discussion, all those in favor? Looks like we've got 6, no one opposed. All right, 6-0, motion carried.
Thank you.
Excellent.
In your board packet, you have a memo regarding the Expendable Trust. We conducted the public hearing on June 19th. Just to give you a little background, during the budget season, Tim and Patrick identified several needed repairs and improvements for their respective buildings during the budget process. At the budget hearing for the FY25 budget, the Hollis Brookline Budget Committee recommended, along with the Hollis Brookline School Board, that the funding source of these particular items be the Hollis Brookline Maintenance Expendable Trust. Those items were the following: a roof section at the high school for $86,240. That's phase 9 out of 10 phases. The elevator retrofit, that it was $65,000. That's phase 1 of 3. And the back entrance reno was $105,000. That was combined with the SAFE grant to meet the total of $205,000, and that work has been completed. At the middle school, the front sidewalk replacement, which included ADA enhancements, for $60,000, which was a total requested of $316,240. The maintenance expendable trust status, the current balance is $151,388. We added $300,000 with the voters' approval at the annual meeting. We expended this summer $316,240, which gives us an available balance of $136,098. That's anticipated, and we do expect some interest on that as well. Kelly, as always, provided you with an update on the other expendable trust, which is our special ed trust. There's no plans to use any funds at this time for FY25. The current balance is $274,125, and that's what we anticipate will be the ending balance in June of '25, plus whatever interest may accrue. So we're looking for is a vote on the requested items and the estimated costs, which again were approved by the voters and discussed with the board during the public hearing.
Okay, so we need a motion to authorize the expenditure of an amount not to exceed $316,240 from the Hollis Brookline Maintenance Expendable Trust for the purchase of the maintenance items identified during the June 19th, 2024 public hearing.
So moved.
Moved by Rob.
Second.
Seconded by Beth. Any discussion?
Andy, you said it's
The Well, the elevator retrofit is one of 3 phases, so that money is in the maintenance trust. So as far as fixing it, no. As far as money being put aside specifically for the elevator, yes. The roof phase at the high school was done this summer, and the back entrance is done.
Where does the money get held?
It stays in the maintenance trust, but it's just a formal acceptance that it's been allocated.
That earmark that's gone?
Correct.
When will the elevator, is it 3 phases over 3 years?
Yeah.
So
Correct, and it's partly because that's when we've been told it should fall apart. But again, we have unbelievable maintenance people who have kept it going. I mean, if you remember how long the middle school elevator ran, and now that's completely fixed and renovated. So we're kind of, I'd say, a little bit ahead on this one, actually planning for that end of life.
Just out of curiosity, based on that scenario, will it get preemptively retrofitted, or will you, if it's still considered operational and safe, will you delay the expenditure, you think? Will Gina delay the expenditure?
Gina would probably do what I would do, and we would let the maintenance people bring out the experts and give us a report.
But it's not that we're absolutely gonna spend it.
Correct. If they came back and said there's no need, you have another year in this, that what would be $195,000 would sit in maintenance trust, but it would be earmarked for the specific purpose.
There was a sidewalk thing from
Oh, yeah,
Oh, yeah.
the gym from,
down.
The side.
Yeah.
Extra lane and wiped out. Is that planned or budgeted?
I believe it remained in the budget.
Yeah.
It didn't happen this summer.
Yeah.
Is that going to be paid out of the actual operating budget?
If it was in the operating budget, it will eventually come out of the operating budget. A lot of times paving will be done in June of '25, which is still the operating budget.
I don't think it's considered paving, is it?
Well, I call it paving. It's the sidewalk from the, where it ends down around to the dumpsters.
Creating a new.
A concrete thing?
It'll be asphalt.
Oh, it will be asphalt?
As far as I know, it's going to be asphalt. Yep.
So that hasn't been discarded?
No, no.
Any more discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? All right, passes 6-0.
The next one is the retained fund balance. In your board packet, you have a memo from Kelly, but I'm going to go through that memo and then provide a piece of information and take your questions. In May and June, we recommended a retained fund balance of $340,000 for FY25, which is 1.5 of the net assessment. We are still estimating that the retained fund balance, along with the board approved expenses, will allow us to return at least $200,000, likely more, to return to the taxpayers as a reduction in taxes. During the budget process, this is the minimum amount that we said we would return. So Kelly's asking for the 340. I'm asking you to consider tonight, just looking at it, we can go up to 2.5%. Kelly has assured me that we'll still be able to meet the minimum return to the taxpayers. And if we were to do the whole 2.5%, that would be $567,000. Now, the reason I'm asking about this is because of the need for boilers at the middle school. Now, we will be definitely coming forward with a warrant article to get those taken care of. My concern is if the warrant article fails, the boilers are budgeted about $950,000. We would very much struggle to find that in the budget. If we were to use the surplus this year and go up to what I would suggest $500,000 for the retained fund balance, when I look at that in the contingency, there should be enough wiggle room in the budget that if the boilers went, that Gina would have the ability to replace them if they failed. They are 30-year-old boilers. We all know they need to be replaced. I'm just concerned and would like to have a little more money on hand should they go. I'm more comfortable now with our special ed trust that we can handle something going wrong there. The budget committee recommended and the voters supported the contingency fund, so that gives me the flexibility if Tim or Patrick came to me and said, enrollment grew, I need another teacher, I have a place to go there. I'm just really worried because that 340,000, that won't cover a boiler. So we would have to come up about $600,000, and I couldn't find that much in the budget.
I brought this up to the facilities committee, and I'd like this group to consider it. I'm anticipating that the recommendation that will come from this facilities committee will be to propose a bond to cover a number of things that include the boilers.
Great.
And bonding or leasing it would extend payments over 10 to 15 years, which would make it, which would allow the budget to be probably flat or lower than this year because we have paid off the existing bond. But Andy brought up this question, and my preference is to put the 800,000 into the budget, and at the district meeting to, there's a bond article that comes forward, have the bond article say that if approved, 800,000 will be pulled out of the budget. I know there's a little gamesmanship that takes place in that, and we don't know yet. But I think the optics of holding back an extra $200,000 or $300,000 from this is more problematic than putting something in the budget as a fail-safe. I agree with Andy's desire to make sure there is real-time funding for it if the need arises right immediately. But I like the mechanism of essentially budgeting it and utilizing that as perhaps leverage or incentive to look at the bond seriously as a financially prudent activity.
And Tom and I have discussed that, and I don't necessarily disagree with it. I'm just getting to the point where, when I look at 340,000, which is an awful lot of money, but if something goes wrong in the co-op, 340,000 is not going to go that far. It's nothing. You know, so I'm only looking, by going up to 500,000, to have 50% of a boiler for one of our two buildings.
What do you think would realistically be left over based on current projections? I know that it's super early.
Yep. Kelly assures me that we could go to that 500,000 that I'm suggesting, and she could, would be able to give back the 200,000, and I think it still may be higher than that.
Do you think it would be 3 or 4, potentially even with that?
It could be. I mean, we've had another very good year, and I need to compliment the two people on my left and the two people on my right, because our two principals and our major overseers of departments have done a really good job. But we're still running, at times, 95, 97% of our budget, and it just worries me when I look at it just from a pure budgeting standpoint. And I'll give you, examples. When I look at what other districts have for their unreserved fund balances that are not much bigger than us, and they're significant.
Just a compromise,
Absolutely.
and this may sound even worse, but regardless of whether or not you go at 340 or 500, budget for the boiler as a discrete item. Don't, if we approve 500, don't keep.
No, and my goal, if you went to 500, is not to spend that 500. That's not the goal. I just,
Don't even earmark it for the boiler.
right, but what my thing is, I'm not saying earmark it. I'm saying I believe we need to have a larger fail-safe in our budget. The voters have approved up to 2.5%, which is where I come up with 567,000. I'm just saying, the way costs have gone up, an elevator breaks, a roof leaks, something happens, we run on very, very slim margins. And I just wanted to make sure we had this discussion, because I know it would allow Kelly to breathe a little earlier, easier, me. Lauren and I sat down today just to once again go over the special ed costs, because, we did have a number of move-ins over the summer.
How would you feel about 2%, which is $450,000?
I mean, it's only $50,000 difference, Tom.
Percentage-wise, it's a different number. I mean,
Yeah. If any number that the board went up would ease my apprehension. So if the board is comfortable at 400,000, I'm comfortable at 400.
I'm kind of open to both approaches. I would say these are tools that have been given to us when we know something is going to happen. We know the boilers are going, and will put them in one way or another. And if my memory serves me, we still remain non-compliant.
Correct.
So we're non-compliant. This needed to be done a couple years ago. Through circumstance, we're here. The boilers are getting changed.
but that's not what a contingency fund is.
Understood. So if we need to plan it, I'm kind of open to both approaches. I'm just saying that,
So if
yeah.
you look at it from a contingency standpoint, we've been approved up to 2.5%. We traditionally use significantly less than that. 1.5% is what we've asked for. What do you want to support as a contingency if we hold ourselves accountable to budgeting for what we know, and that's the boiler?
But take the boiler out of this for a second, and just think of the fact that right now, if we did the 340, I'd have the 340 and the 125. So I had 465 between those two accounts that you as a board could use if something went wrong.
We're not even doing it right. If there was a need, an unanticipated need.
Right. I'm thinking more, because we've been very good about anticipating our needs, something kind of would have to be broken unexpectedly.
I'm thinking, I like the idea of thinking about it for unexpected staffing needs, which to me is like
Yep.
a positive occurrence.
Right. I just think that 465 is still low. I'm asking you to consider going up to 500,000 plus the 125 that was approved by the voters, gives 625,000, which is, about 3%. So that means, and again, we've never touched the unreserved fund balance since I've been here, and I don't intend to use it again. But I just think it's good practice for us to bring that up and have that as a safeguard. That's why the law was changed. And I think it's the same thing I would do at home at my own budgeting. Everything's gone up, so that $10,000 I maybe had for my roof now needs to be 15 or 20 to get that same roof fixed. So you add to your emergency fund. I just think it's a time to consider it. We have been very good about giving everything back to the taxpayers. We have done a great job of planning. I mean, I sit here and we're in phase 9 of 10 at the high school roofs. That was $2.5 million. And it'll be done with this year's budget. Tim's boilers are being replaced, he's going to propane. We're now gonna be buying propane at the SAU for Hollis, and now the town of Brookline has contacted us, and they're gonna be jumping in because we know we can expand our power. So I think we've done a lot of great things financially to assist. And again, I have no problem if you don't want to do the 5, I get it. I just felt it was my obligation to bring it forward and let the board make the decision.
Would this, so technically this is your recommendation? You're bringing what, as a recommendation?
Kelly provided me with one thing. I'm recommending, if that's the term we want to use, which I'm fine with, that the board should consider going to 500,000 in the unreserved fund balance as the safety net for the future, which is probably, if 400,000 is 2%,
450,000, 456
Yep.
rather than jumping all the way,
Yep,
go 450, because I hear what you're saying
Yep.
about costs have escalated, but when you're using a percentage, our budget has grown too, so 1% of the budget has increased as well.
I agree.
So I would be more confident defending going to 2% than the 500,000, that's me.
And to be honest with the board, I can absolutely support if Tom wanted to make a motion for 2% and 457,000, because that starts to get the message out that I think we need to do. We really need, in a district this size, I think we should be $750,000 to $1 million in a contingency fund because of what could go wrong. I know voters don't like when we hold back money, and that's not my intent. My intent is, at some point, something's gonna happen, and I think we're the responsible party, and when we're standing up there, whether it be a special meeting, people are gonna ask us why we
Yeah.
weren't prepared for this.
Right.
And I'm just saying,
From your point of view, what are the cons, if you will, of budgeting it, the whole amount in the budget? And why,
right?
why has that not,
No, right now, round one, the total amount of the boiler project is in the budget. I would never support paying for that. It doesn't make sense because a boiler is, to me, a 30-year item, and I'd want to spend that over a lease or a bond, so as people move in and out of the community, they share that expense.
right,
If I put it in the budget, that means the people
It's a
who are paying
one-time.
taxes that year are funding that
the
boiler.
whole thing?
So that's my worry about,
But we know we've got to do it, so we're expecting that we'll come up with a plan. And the budget isn't finished yet, I mean,
No.
if we choose to do something different, but putting it in the budget, if you have a separate warrant article and it fails, you've still got the notice budget
To do it.
to do it. Because
Right.
we've got to do it. We've got to fix it, we've got to do something with the boilers.
And to have it in a bond, you're gonna bundle those boilers with a bunch of other stuff,
Potentially.
and that expands the debate.
correct.
So what this is saying is, no matter what, at the end of the day, we're keeping our word and returning at least $200,000.
Correct.
to the taxpayer.
We are absolutely doing that, and this is just giving the board a larger safety net. Just as the board knows, I can't spend it unless I have a public hearing, and the board has to vote for that expenditure. And I have the 125 contingency, that to me would be the first place I went if I needed a teacher or something like that. So this to me is kind of to offset that large item that goes that we didn't anticipate.
It's a safety net in an emergent situation.
Correct.
Do you have proposed wording for the motion?
I do?
I would make the motion with the dollar amount of $460,000.
I mean, to me, we're squabbling over $40,000.
You may be squabbling, but I'm looking at a percentage
I-
of the dollar amount.
And I-
Can we,
Yep.
can we look at this?
Yep,
Oh,
okay. Well, we don't have yeah, I mean, I guess we don't.
I would ask you to
The motion.
consider
Gotcha.
this, is that if we get a motion, for me, I have a recommendation from our superintendent and nothing else. I have a recommendation. So from a procedural approach, I'd rather have a motion on the recommendation and a discussion on altering that motion. And then we can debate that change. We can hear more from Tom. I know, but that's only one way to do it, rather than not putting the recommendation on the board and then having a board member put their own recommendation, then now we're only talking about the 470, right? At least doing it the other way, we can debate both rigorously.
No, you can't. No, I make a motion to amend.
Right,
So, okay.
but we can hear from members about the, we can hear from members. Okay, I would,
If I
yeah,
could, I would suggest that the message that I want to deliver would be heard loud and clear for the future for the incoming superintendent if we went to Tom's number. I can look at Kate's point both ways. It's $40,000 either way. So rather than create debate amongst the board, I think adding another $120,000 to what the business manager is recommending gets me to that next level. And then to Tom's point, the budget will grow naturally, so we'll start to continue to catch up on that. And at some point, Gina would have the same discussion of how to increase that to the sitting board at that time. So if you're asking my opinion, I think $460,000 accomplishes my goal, gives me a larger safety net that I don't intend to use. That's the biggest thing. I'm just looking for a safety net.
Okay.
And it gets us away from that debate back and forth, because one of the strengths of this board has been this dialogue and then achieving the goal. And the goal is the larger safety net, and I think we've done that. And I think this could potentially be more likely be a unanimous vote, which I think is a very positive sign, rather than somebody feeling that they voted up or down to either support the dollar amount or my position. So I think this is, if the board would indulge and make the motion of 460, I think I can assure you that I can make that work.
Okay, I'm good with that.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I think just to sort of finish my thought from before, where we're not asking the town to sort of vote on a money amount that we don't have, that this is actually money that we already do have, we are giving them back money regardless. It feels a little bit less, like when we're looking at $40,000, they are still getting a large sum back. And what we are doing is adding to a contingency that if there's an emergency, we're going to have a little bit more there. And then in the end of the day, chances are less that we will have to go to them and ask for more money in the future, which is always a harder thing to do than if we have a little bit more money now, sort of padding if there is if there is a problem. So, but I hear what you're saying in terms of the taxpayer might look at it and say, but there's like holding on to an actual percentage number versus a percentage of a percentage.
The reason I'm hanging up on this is that we have historically done this as a percentage number. And when you go to something that is an odd number, and they ask you, how did you come up with that number? My concern is that it will be, this is my paranoia, that someone will say, they have something in mind. Why didn't they just go to a round percentage? Whereas if we move from 1.5% to 2%, to me, I can easily defend an argument that says, we feel we need a larger contingency. We've gone from 1.5% to 2%. That's where my comfort level is. And it's not about $40,000. It's about my ability to defend it.
To explain it.
That's exactly what I was gonna say. I don't want to extend this conversation anymore, but that's exactly it, is we have to defend this. And there's, just because the voters supported this, there's a lot that didn't. Like, we're representing all of them, and it's a slower progression. So I feel very comfortable with the 2. I don't feel comfortable with anything more than that, but that's how voters are always taught and looked at, is the percentage. So to me, it's much more about that than it is the 40,000.
Okay. So, we are looking for a motion to retain up to the sum of $460,000 of school fund balance from the FY24 school year as the end of year available funds allow.
So moved.
Moved by
Second.
Krista, seconded by Rob. Any more discussion? Or are we talked out? All right, all those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Opposed? Got them all? All right, cool. Passes 6-0. Excellent.
All right, now moving to the fast part of the meeting.
One motion for the whole sheet of the paper.
I like that.
Here's
You're
a,
funny.
here's a really great memo that hopefully everybody read.
I like it.
You'll need some candy for this one? All right.
I'm gonna let Gina explain it.
So the memo's purpose was hopefully to guide the conversation because there are so many policies, a lot of them driven by changes in Title IX, and so we really couldn't hold back on moving forward some of these policies. So the first 3 policies, JKAA, JICA, and JCA, are all policies that are coming forward for a second reading with no changes. So you've seen it, you saw them last month, you're seeing them this month. I will share that we did receive feedback from JICI, from community members, and we had a discussion about it, and we decided to go with no changes based on questions that we had that were brought forward from our last discussion. We had reached out to our attorney, and then a similar question came forward from the community about students versus adults. And the J policies are for students, so we're going to keep them as such, where we know that those policies are simply intended for students. So you could make one motion to approve 3 at once.
Do you want us to wait
Bundle.
for motions then to have discussions?
Yeah.
I make a motion to accept for second reading with no changes, policies JKAA, JICI, and JCA.
Second.
Are you not doing the memo?
But
Not the whole.
It's
Not
from the
the whole memo,
Yeah.
no, I'm doing those 3 and then
Yep.
we're gonna.
Holly was hoping
I
we'd
just
get the whole.
thought I mean, one memo would be great, but realistically, I thought if they were similarly chunked,
Bundling a bundle.
Oh, she was hoping for a
Wow.
bundle.
Bundle square.
She was hoping for one and done. She wasn't sure
I
she was gonna
don't
get it, but.
mind. Yeah.
Do you wanna try to do the whole thing?
That's up to the board.
Let's give it a shot.
oh my goodness,
All right,
I'm
I take
nervous.
back that motion.
You wanna read you have the motion that, is that how Don?
Well.
wrote it?
Oh, got it.
Sorry.
I'll tell you.
Did you just hit
No
Krista?
bug in me.
I think,
She had wording I thought proposed.
now, what I have individuals, JKA, JICI. I don't know that I ever got like a bundled.
I mean, she separated them, yeah.
She separated them all individually.
Yeah, she separated them.
I make a motion to accept the co-op policy committee memo
As-
And recommendations.
recommendations, the recommendations from the co-op policy committee memo.
Second. Sorry.
No.
Okay.
So it would mean those would be second reading, those would be second reading and
Yep.
adopt, that would be third reading and adopt.
Okay.
Now we can talk about everything.
All right, so do we have any questions for the first 3 policies? We're second reading, no changes.
No.
JKA, JICI, and JCA.
Okay.
On JSCI, just to clarify a little bit more, the way that it's written, they talk about, no weapons are allowed on it.
Mhm.
How do we implicitly recognize in this policy that we are not empowered to restrict non-students?
We do not, and based on legal advice, this policy is a J policy, which is specifically referring to students.
So this policy cannot be used to try and restrict anyone else?
Correct.
That's correct.
Okay, the fact that it comes under student policy
Correct.
is mandatorily does that?
Yep.
That was my question.
Okay. Any other questions on those first three? Okay.
ACF.
ACF, sorry, I'm just trying to open them. ACF, really basic. There were no questions last time. We're looking for second and adopt without any changes. It's simply referencing discrimination relative to food and nutrition services. And it identifies who to make a complaint to. So the policy committee wanted this in place before the start of the school year. We already are in compliance with the displaying of the poster, so we felt comfortable about moving that forward. Third, reading and adopt. We had EEAA, use of video and audio, and then EEAAR, the regulation. So I did receive a question about this. The component, Tom, that said the superintendent will consult with the necessary personnel to determine how and when such recordings should be deleted. So that's intentionally vague because that the necessary personnel would be 100% determined but based on what was discovered in the recording. So we don't want to make it too wordy so that we then limit our ability to do what we legally have to do.
Can it come back to haunt you that says that, well, so-and-so should have been consulted, they are necessary, and you didn't consult them?
I don't believe so, because if we said this, let's say the police will be consulted. We don't want them to be consulted with all matters, and so then we are, we're in conflict, or we just don't want to pigeonhole ourselves into something that we.
Well, it's just when you're saying personnel, that implies that they're employees of something. Is there anyone that you don't want to have to consult?
I think the chain of
Yeah,
command, no, I think the chain of command is pretty well established.
Okay.
So I would feel very comfortable having to answer that question of if a person was skipped or something was skipped is a reason why.
You have my other question that was on?
Yep, hang on. So all persons will be responsible for any violation of school rules caught on tape by camera. So, if there's a student caught on tape by a camera and they're violating school rules, then certainly they're responsible for violation. If there is a person who violates a school rule, which is also a law, then they would also be held accountable. If an adult, not a student, is caught violating.
Well, the key here is you're saying caught. This implies that everybody's responsible. All persons. It doesn't say all persons in the video, all persons implicated. It just says all persons, and that.
I think the phrase caught also refers to the acknowledgement, someone identifying that.
But caught does not currently modify persons.
Okay. Would you like to
Well,
move it?
Maybe it's punctuation. I don't know for instance, are the teachers who are supposedly supervising a student, are they partly responsible? Are the parents responsible? I didn't know if this was meant to include, it takes a village.
Mhm. Are you suggesting that it says all persons caught on tape by cameras violating school rules will be held responsible?
That would certainly narrow it down, but I didn't know if that was more restrictive than the. So I don't understand what the rules are, so I don't know who is considered responsible. If it's only the people doing or caught on the video, are you limited to only the people on the video, or can you broaden your area of responsibility beyond that?
You would be able to broaden it based on the investigation conducted by the administrator. So,
But is this sentence supposed to emphasize that, or is this really only talking about, hey, if you're caught, you're responsible? I'm not going beyond that in the statement. I don't know what the statement's supposed to,
well, I think if you're caught on that video,
yeah.
okay, that is going to be information that is part of the investigation, and you might be done because you're caught. But I might get to 5 more people because of what you decide to tell me after you know you're caught.
So is this trying to say that the people caught on tape are responsible, or that all responsible people will be responsible for the violation?
What I think the way I interpret it, the way we put it into practice, is the people caught on tape are caught on tape. That doesn't mean that we're done our investigation and there aren't more people to be caught. I don't,
Then but what does responsibility entail in this context?
responsibility for what you did on that tape. Let's say you,
Okay, so
For-
you're
for the
limiting it on
violation.
the tape, though.
for the violation. It may lead me to something that isn't on the tape, but if I'm meeting with Tom Solon about what's on the tape, I'm limiting it to the tape unless Tom Solon or another student sends me down another pathway.
If I send you on another pathway, do you want this sentence to extend that individually?
It doesn't need to extend to that because my investigation extends.
Then in that case, the rewording that Gina proposed, I think would be worthwhile.
Okay,
You follow my?
yep.
What is your rewording?
She's looking right now.
I'm gonna really try to figure that
All
out.
persons caught on tape by cameras committing any violations of school rules?
All persons caught on tape by cameras violating school rules will be held responsible.
Yep.
But doesn't limit the investigation.
Violating school.
This is all.
'Cause I wouldn't-
Campus.
Right.
Yeah, because I wouldn't support it
Yeah.
without,
Still
if
putting
it
some
limits
policies
the
that-
investigation.
No, within the context of what,
Okay,
Yep.
how we frame, that's what
I can live with it.
Yep, that's fine. That's exactly why we go through these.
Sorry, I'm just making sure I have that. The
Resend.
next is, we talked about it when we brought EEAA and EEAAR for first read. If those are adopted, then ECAD and ECADR need to be rescinded. They essentially cover the same thing. The EEAA is just a new placement for it. GBCD is background investigation criminals record change, second reading with a minor change, and the minor change is on page 5. And we're removing one line that sort of confuses the process about who pays for the criminal history record check, and it's the applicant who pays. So we are just removing a line that sort of interferes with the clarity of that statement. And then, just as we saw last fall, AC, ACAA, ACAB, significant updates per the law last year, while significant changes to the law occurred again, and those policies were completely overhauled. You'll see regulations at the next meeting, but we thought this was enough for you to digest today. So these are all based on all the Title IX updates. They're significant, they're lengthy policies, and I'm looking forward to the student one. I'm not looking forward to, I'm looking for it on my computer, sorry. All right, so pregnant students used to be a pretty short and basic policy of ours, and we thought, why not make it 3 pages long? JIE, pregnant students. So this was based on updates to Title IX and what we can and cannot do when we become aware of a pregnant student. So, yeah, so it's pretty long. But it's very straightforward, and it requires that we provide additional resources with the Title IX contact information for that student, and that we're not allowed to request for proof of their ability to participate in our programs.
Do we have the facilities, the space to meet all these requirements currently, or we will have to reconfigure any spaces?
I think we've made,
Yeah.
I'll say, substantial progress over the last few years in dealing with our adult staff, and we would just use those facilities for impacted students.
So that right there is the policy memo.
I like it.
Do we have to amend the motion to include, edit to?
Krista, would you like to amend?
EAA?
I'd like to amend my motion to include the changes that we made to EEAA.
EIO?
That one too.
Rob, are you seconding that?
I am seconding that. How did you know?
I just can read your mind.
So the first vote would be to accept the amendments, then we would defer back to the memo.
Okay.
Right.
So,
So, any other discussion? So, all those in favor of the amendment? 3, 4, 5, 6, no opposed, so 6-0, the amendment passes. And if there's no more discussion, then all those in favor of accepting the memo, I don't remember the exact motion, the amended, it's on the table, the amended motion. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, look at that.
Wow.
6-0, motion passes.
It's not even. Good
No, that's amazing.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yes, it does, a very,
That's how it's done.
a very good.
That was excellent. We did it that way.
All right.
I'm sure she's
Oh, the
listening right
efficiencies.
now.
So we should do a report out from the process observer before
Yep.
next steps. Tom?
Yeah. So let's see what. Are we doing everything?
Going to have a non-meeting.
Non-meeting.
Correct.
Well, it was very well presented and organized. Timing-wise, we got a real head start on things. About a half hour ago, public input, and the fact that we've got all the staffing in place pretty much from last meetings. That saved a lot of time. I thank the principals for their summarization of the reports, and the benefit that the summary report helped with it. We got some really good information, some good news. The Title IX discussion was, I think, longer than might have been anticipated, but was extremely helpful and important, as was some of the discussion around contingency funds and stuff, but as we still finished ahead of time. It's a little bit, it was a little bit focused on mechanics. I'm looking forward to getting back into a situation where we perhaps look at some staff presentations and things on student-related life. Overall, I thought the meeting was conducted very well and very productive.
Cool.
well
I-
done, Kate.
I had good co-pilots. Given non-meeting, do we adjourn?
We adjourn.
Sweet.
I would like to make the motion to adjourn at 7:59.
Second.
Alrighty.
If you take a vote fast, he'll
All
still
in
be-
favor? No opposed? All
Landed
right.
this puppy by
We are
wow.
adjourned. Look at that.
That's-